I'm here with Alex, the CEO of Candidate, to talk about choosing the talent that makes or breaks your startup.
So James, what are some of the mistakes you see when selecting a VP of sales or sort of head of sales?
Yeah, there are many mistakes that I've seen founders make. And if anyone wants to put in their mistakes as well for transparency, that would be great learning. But a couple of the key ones that call out for me: hiring for who you want to be than who you are today. Often we have very future-focused founders hitting for big goals, but we do need to hire for our environment right here. The second one is around the buyer context. So you need to have someone that understands what it's like to sell to that buyer persona, so they can understand their problems and connect with them on an emotional level. And thirdly, you're often wanting the VP of sales to do multiple roles. So they've got to be selling, they've got to be coaching, they've got to be creating lead gen campaigns, they've got to be recruiting. There's lots of different facets to a role. So just be exactly clear on what you want them to do. Fourthly, they lack a lot of the data skills needed to really analyze your revenue operation. And when you're a scaling startup, looking for VC investment and future funding is really important. And then fifth, there's often very poor assessment standards for hiring VP of sales. It's often people you know, and they kind of skip any structured assessment process for the VP of sales. This is an absolute key role for the company and its future growth. So you've got to get it right by assessing them in the right way. Moving on to talk about hiring someone who's moved jobs. Get this question a lot from founders. If they've moved jobs, how viable they are for our company. What's your opinion on that, Alex?
It's a very divisive issue. And I think there is a reality here that, the average tenure of most employees at Series A and Series B is actually 13 months. So it's a very short time. And we have to be honest about the fact that sometimes it's the employees' fault for leaving, and sometimes it just didn't work out at that startup, and it could be for lots of different reasons. So I think just to discount someone because they were at a startup for 5, 6, 7 months is short-term thinking. So I think you have to ask the reasons, and I think as a candidate you should be very honest if something didn't work out. You should be very honest if you got fired. I've been fired twice, and it's okay to be fired. It's just important that you're very honest about the reasons why.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I am also a recipient of being fired before. I know what it's like to be the top performer in half the year, and then also the bottom performer in the second half of the year. So I've lived and breathed that lovely experience, and I think you're right. Being honest about it and moving forward. Just because you might have had one challenge in your career doesn't mean that the whole next 20, 30 of your careers is going to follow suit. And also, we do have that special point in being in startups, is that some startups do fail. I mean, in our space, it's 90% of those startups fail.
I mean, sometimes that person was hired and they just were not a good fit. And that's often because the role was misspec'd. They weren't given the support they needed. So it's not always as clear as that person just left after 6 months. I think there's always a lot of context around it.
A lot of people talk about diversity of talent, diversity of experience. Can you tell me what you think is acceptable in terms of diversity of experience?
Look, I've seen people work out in sales who've got no sales experience. I've seen the same in marketing. I think there are fundamental attributes of their character and their adaptability to what they're going into. So I think just to hire someone because they've got X amount of experience in that role is short-term thinking. The reality is, though, obviously you de-risk it by having someone who has done the role before. But I think you need to be open-minded about talent and who can succeed in what role.
Yeah, I often hear founders echo some of those thoughts. They also talk about the will to sell over the ability to sell. So they would rather have almost a rookie that has the right attitude rather than experienced head that may not have the right cultural, addition to the piece.
So just to add to that, James, one of the things that is key for me in my team is really understanding if that person has the grit for the challenge. And it's a very hard thing to interview for. And often I go about it by asking some of how they've overcome certain challenges in their life. And it really can be anything that has happened to them. But once I understand how they've overcome those challenges, it really helps me understand the person better.